My name's Bradley Guys,
And my name is Adam Pringer.
and welcome to the Hot Swap. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 3 of the Hot Swap. I'm here with Adam Pranger. What's going on, man?
Not a whole lot. Enjoying this beautiful warm weather.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was really warm when I stepped out earlier, and then I was inside working on some videos and stuff for a couple hours. I swear it dropped like 15 degrees. It was. I live next to the water, so I stepped out. The wind was nearly knocking me and my dogs over, and it was really cold. And I definitely should have been wearing a tank top outside. But anyway, so we don't really have a ton to talk about what we played this week. I really only have one thing I wanted to mention real quick, and then you were going to get into a little story after that.
Story time, yes.
So the only thing I was going to mention, I played all the usual suspects this week, but I also played the Pokken Tournament demo, which has like four fighters. Has Lucario, Gengar, Charizard, Pikachu. I tried out Charizard and Gengar.
Okay.
And I don't know what to say. It kind of feels like the Bleach game that came out for Wii. If you've ever played that fighting game, that was a 3D perspective, or maybe even a little bit kind of like Naruto Clash.
I played the Naruto games.
So yeah, you know how you would break apart from fighting in 2D and you would go out into kind of a 3D view where you could move around side to side. You could throw shurikens and stuff. It's basically just like that. And then all the Pokemon have like a mega finisher, and that's about all. The demo's very sparse. There's not a lot going on. You could try those four guys, and the fights go real fast. So I've got the full version coming, and I'll have a lot more to talk about once I can actually get in there, train, and really figure out the mechanics. But that's all I really played this week besides the usual stuff I play.
I was wondering how many support characters were there available to you?
You can choose between two. Basically, there's two groups of two, and the first group I believe was Geodude and Diglett, and the other group was Fennekin, and I can't remember the fourth one. I'm sorry, and that's it though. No matter who you chose to fight with, you had to choose between those two groups, and then you had to choose one per fight from that group. So, let's say you go into the first fight and you lose. Maybe you didn't like your support, you could switch it up. Switch to the next one on the next fight. Maybe try to turn the tables.
Okay. That was really my only question. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it's Pokemon, so I'm automatically going to like it.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like it was super complicated, which in most fighting games, that's kind of what I'm looking for. But again, It's a demo. Let's wait till I get the full version, and I'm reserving judgment until I get the full version in the mail.
That is very fair of you.
So, that's it. So, I'm interested to hear this. He's been hyping this story up to me all week. So
Okay. So, instead of talking about any of the games that I've been playing, which are sparse, I decided I would fill up my time today by telling the story of how I got my Gold Mario amiibo, which was kind of an adventure for me. It's definitely the most complicated amiibo that I was able to get. So, it's an exclusive to Walmart amiibo that came out when Mario Party 10 came out.
Right.
And I'm trying to collect all of them. So I have to get this at some point. And I feared, based on some of the sales on like eBay and Amazon of the pricing that it was over $200.
Yeah, it was crazy when I was trying to hunt it too at Amazon. The best I ever saw cheap wise was like $70.
Yeah. So I was not about to be paying that. So I was somewhat determined to get one. But I kind of forgot what day it was coming out. And so the closest Walmart to where I was living at the time was about 3 miles away. And so by the time I realized what day it was and that there was a game releasing at midnight. Uh, it was already 3 or 4 minutes till midnight. I got there at about like maybe 5 minutes after midnight, and they were completely wiped. Now I live in a fairly densely populated suburban area. That's a suburb of St. Louis, and so it's not that surprising that they would have been completely wiped out immediately. The lines probably were filled up well before midnight, so that's not that surprising. I kind of had that coming to me. I would have been willing to wait. I waited I waited like 4 or 5 hours for the a couple of the Fire Emblem amiibo when those came out, along with Jigglypuff at Target. So I'm not afraid of waiting. And so I wanted to get it, and I didn't want to pay internet prices. So I drove to pretty much the next town over, which is about 9 miles away from where I live, and checked their location. This is kind of starting to get more rural, and so my hope was maybe I can get it. Uh, and they were also wiped out.
Yeah, because a
Um,
bunch of people probably thought the same thing as you, and from your
Probably.
area, and probably went down there. They probably followed you down there, Adam, to look for Gold Mario too.
Yeah, so it was a conscious effort to head away from town because I knew that all of the other Walmart locations going deeper into the city were going to be wiped out.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured my best bet was to rely on vastly more or less traffic in the store versus some kind of like higher supply in the store because I didn't think that would affect it at all. So then I decided to drive to the town that's 14 miles away from where I live, uh, and they also didn't have it. And then not that much further, I've driven a lot of this area in my free time just because I like to drive sometimes. I drove to the town that is 28 miles away from my house. They also were completely wiped, and that did surprise me. But at that point, I had kind of I was weighing my options. I could keep driving down Highway 70, which is the way I was going, but I felt like the next stores I was going to get to are in Columbia, Missouri, which is a big college town. I figured there's no way I'm getting anything out of that out of that town. No. So I started to look on my phone at the different Walmarts that were around me or not really around me, but the ones in the general direction that I was headed. And I decided to take a route to a small town that I've never actually been to called Mexico, Missouri.
Oh, cool.
I figured it would be a big enough town to make having a Walmart make sense. But when I drove there or was driving there, it's pretty much in the middle of farmland. There was nothing around it.
Oh, wow.
A very, very small town. And so when I get in there, it's not only the nicest Walmart I've ever been to, it was actually quite sizable still,
Hmm.
which surprised me. And there hadn't been a single person there that entire night to get anything amiibo related or game related, I don't believe.
Oh,
At
wow.
least according to the people that were working there.
So that's jackpot for you, right?
Yeah. Now, they I believe they had a rule about buying one at a time. I believe so, or at least I honored my own rule of buying what the limit, like a one limit. Um, so I bought one, and I had what I needed. I was very elated. It was already starting to get pretty late, but I decided that I was going to try and get a few more if I could.
Oh, wow.
Uh, I have a lot of friends who are really into video games from working at GameStop. That kind of comes with the territory, and I knew I had friends that were wanting to get them and still hadn't had one pre-ordered or locked down yet. So I decided that I was going to um, drive even further. Now Mexico, Missouri is about 90 miles away from my house,
Okay.
and I'm kind of familiar with the general direction I'm going, which is towards the like northern center part of the state. My dad's family is from this area, And so I drive up to the next town that I know has a Walmart because I've been there several times, which is Moberly, Missouri, and that is 130 miles away from where I live. And they surprisingly didn't have any, but I knew that not that far, much further north, in a small town called Macon, Missouri, where my grandparents used to live, they had a really small Walmart, a really really small Walmart. And so I figured it's already late. I'm already I still have energy. I'm just going to go for that and then call it a night after that point. So I drive all the way up there. I thought it was going to be a really good shot at getting another one, just so I could have another one to like give to a friend. And they're closed.
Oh.
I didn't even realize or didn't even bother to look to see if they were open 24 hours, but they closed at 9 o'clock or something.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't realize quite how small this is. It's like the size of a Walgreens or a CVS or like a drugstore. It's really
I've never
tiny.
seen a Walmart that like I've never been to a Walmart that isn't 24 hours, and I've never been to one I've never been one that's smaller than all Walmart. They're all like the same size everywhere I go.
Generally, yeah. Now they have started to open up these like small only grocery store Walmarts.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but that's not game related, so we don't need to talk about it. And so I drove all that way, and I was pretty bummed and starting to finally get tired at that point. And I just kind of felt stupid because the only people there were people that worked there, because there was like people unloading trucks or something.
Right.
And so I get back on the highway because it's right off of a highway, and I ended up going the wrong direction.
Oh,
It's
wow.
and it's probably a 3 or 4 each way lane highway, but it's all connected. There's no median or anything at this point of town. And so since it's like 1 or 2 in the morning, there's nobody around. I decide that I'm just going to do a big U-turn in the middle of the highway,
Oh. Uh-oh.
and a cop sees me, and so the cop pulls me over, and I'm getting even more upset. And luckily, I just get a warning out of it,
Oh, that was nice
which,
of him.
which is fantastic. Um, and I like to think in my head to make the story sound better that the reason I didn't get a ticket is because in that town there are several car washes and I think a couple of like car repair places that have my last name on them.
Oh.
So I don't know if maybe that had anything to do with it, or if the guy realized that I was a guy from nowhere near there, and I was just trying to get home at that point, and he probably just cut me some slack. So I was pretty nice. I was pretty happy about that, and so I'm driving home, and I'm in my smart car. I still have my smart car at this point,
Right.
and I'm driving, and I'm getting pretty close. I'm probably halfway back to my house, still on the same highway going south towards Highway 70. And then I see something rather large in the middle of the road, and it ends up being a deer that had already been hit
Mm-hmm.
and was laying in the side of the road, and there was no way that I could avoid it. And so I basically just run my car into this thing
Oh, my God.
and ramp over it. Luckily, there's no damage to the front of my car.
Wow.
And the entire way home, which was probably about an hour and a half, I kept like noticing every sound that my car makes, thinking that I somehow messed up
Like your
a part of
transmission or bent your frame or something. Yeah,
yes,
I've hit a
something
deer
that
before. It's
something that
scary.
messed up my wheels or my axle or something to where I'm breaking my car driving it. And I'm not as familiar with these roads, so I don't know the normal sounds that they make. And so I was really nervous the entire way home, but I actually took it to a car shop a little bit after that just to make sure that everything was okay. And they said it was fine. So luckily I made it out of that without having a huge accident where I had to like get a tow truck to drive it all the way back to my house.
Yeah, that would have
Um,
sucked.
but that was all in an effort to get one gold amiibo.
Well, you're
Because I have a
dedicated.
problem. Yeah.
Nah, you're dedicated. It's not a problem. Speaking of hitting deer, I hit a deer a month and a half ago, and I actually have a headlight coming from Canada. I ran into a deer's butt with my headlight. I barely tapped him. It was just enough to shatter my headlight. Nothing else happened. But I've got one coming from Canada right now, so hopefully it'll be here by next week. And and I've got a gold Mario Amiibo story too. When they did the reissue, I went on a Play Asia and I paid $20, and they mailed one to me.
Well, you can never be too cautious. I actually bought an entire Wii system just to get the 8-bit Mario.
Excellent. To get this Mario. Hold on, let me grab him. This guy right here.
I have both him and the classic colored one.
I do as well.
Awesome.
I just don't feel like getting up to get him. This is the one I keep on my desk.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's it,
that's
right?
That's all my story. Yep, that's it.
So
I thought it was kind of interesting.
I'm as somebody who has been hunting Amiibo since they came out, just like you. I have also driven around, and I'm always on Play Asia. I'm all over Amazon, eBay, everything, just to try and find one that's not, tripled up in price. I can appreciate you. You'd rather spend your time and a little gas than drop like $200 on some plastic. I understand where you're coming from.
And really, it's about who I'm paying that money to.
Yeah.
These people that are buying them just to sell them, I'm not really into giving them money to reward them for that.
Yeah, I don't like it either, but sometimes push comes to shove and you want that Amiibo, so you got to do what you got to do,
Find the best deal still.
Cool. So thanks for the story, Adam. I found it very interesting. Let's go ahead and take a break. Adam's got the first song. It's going to be the Donkey Kong Country title theme. And when we come back, we're going to jump into... We didn't really decide on a name. Is it going to be our favorite Donkey Kong games?
It's just... it is our favorite Donkey Kong games, yeah.
Yeah, we got together over the week. We collaborated on a list, and we're going to discuss the list and discuss the games. So we will be right back.
And we're back, and we're gonna cover a section off 10 sections of Donkey Kong games.
Yeah.
That we're wanting to talk about our favorite Donkey Kong games. At least for some of us, in some cases.
Yeah, we both had to compromise on a few games because there's ones that you like that I don't prefer, and vice versa. And I just wanted to mention you have the list, I don't, so.
Okay.
I'm just going to go off of what you say and comment.
All right, I'm going to remove all of your games from the list. All right, so as a series in general, or just games with Donkey Kong as the major focus, I thought it would be best if we started off by talking about the original arcade series, which would include Donkey Kong Jr., Donkey Kong 3.
Right.
Maybe Donkey Kong Jr. Math.
Which I've never actually played that game, so.
I played it on Animal Crossing for the GameCube.
Oh, cool.
It's very similar to like Math Munchers of the time period. Well, I guess not really the time period, but if you've ever played Math Munchers or any of those old math computer games, it fits right in well with those games.
I played the one on the old school Apple where they were fishes, and I forget how it worked. I think you would be like, you would eat one fish plus the fish you had the number, and then you would try to make the total that it showed. That's
exactly how that worked.
Cool.
But I'm not a huge fan of Donkey Kong.
Me
Uh,
neither.
it must be the best one of all the arcade games because that's the only one I ever hear talking about high scores. They make movies about it.
Yep.
I think that Donkey Kong Country 3 is a better game, and I think you do too.
Oh, definitely. I think Donkey Kong Jr. is a better game,
Uh,
personally.
yes, Donkey Kong Jr. is the best. I just like the vine mechanic in that game.
Yes,
I like
definitely.
playing as Donkey Kong Jr.
Yep, and I think 3 is fun too. It's totally different. It's not like any other
Yeah.
Donkey Kong game, but I don't know. Donkey Kong 1 is cool for what it was when it came out. It's fun for about 10 minutes, and then unless you're like you said, unless you're going for a high score,
Unless you're really good at it.
yeah, I mean, it's just I don't know, it gets kind of boring after. I mean, how many times can you go through the same 4 levels? I just get bored.
I agree. Uh, anything else you want to say about the original series?
No.
Not really. Okay.
No.
Well, we'll move on. Very similar to the original series and heavily inspired by it. The next one is the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series, which you are vastly more familiar with. I have played some of it, but that's more your expertise.
Yeah, I like the GBA one the most, and I actually went through my games. I don't have it anymore. I don't know what I did. I must have traded it in or something many years ago. But basically, the first Versus game on a GBA was like Donkey Kong 94, which is something we'll mention later. It was you were still Mario, and you could still move around. It's not like the mini games of today where you're moving the toys however you do it with the touch screen or like that's how the new one is. I'm pretty sure that's how the DS one was. The GBA one, you were leading a bunch of mini Marios to the end, kind of like that Krusty's Funhouse game on NES.
Okay.
So you were leading a bunch of mini Mario toys to the end, and you had to try and keep them all from getting hurt, and the more you had at the end, the better score you got. But you were still controlling Mario, just like in all the old school Donkey Kong. It was, it's basically the same kind of mechanics. You could do your little jump, you could do flips and stuff, but you would run around and move platforms around and switches and all kinds of stuff to lead the mini Marios away from danger to the goal. That's how the first Mario vs. Donkey Kong game was. And it was really fun. Myself and my wife both really enjoyed it a lot. And we took turns running through it, and we talked about it a bunch, and we played it for months. So,
I'm sorry.
I
kind of forgot that it was where you were actually controlling Mario. It passed my mind up that you actually played as him rather than only controlling the toys.
I'm pretty sure. It's been like 12 years, but that's how I remember it.
It sounds about right. Because I remember it being described as a Lemmings game, but with Mario. That's how I always remember it being described as.
I never played Lemmings, so.
I played that one a little bit, but that was always too much for me to have to control all these things and let them get through the levels like that. But, I mean, it's basically what you're describing with the original Mario vs. Donkey Kong.
And I believe it still had the old key system as well. That's also from Donkey Kong 94. It really was a sequel to Donkey Kong 94, but it did take some things away that disappointed me. But it added stuff with the mini Marios. I'm watching a video now. You're definitely still controlling Mario, and you're leading a ton of mini Marios around. So.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I remembered it. So it's really fun. I recommend if you like the newer style mini Mario games, or if you just like playing Mario platformers, check it out, guys. It's pretty fun.
Awesome. Now the next game is something that I know about, which is Diddy Kong Racing. I'm counting it as a Donkey Kong game because it's listed as a Donkey Kong game on a Donkey Kong Wiki and on Wikipedia. And you haven't played it at all?
I think I tried it a couple times when it first came out, and it was fun. I didn't own it, and it was on N64 first, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't have an N64 until I was much older, so I never owned it, and I only tried it at a friend's house a couple times, but I thought it was cool. Felt like Mario Kart, but you could fly and stuff. I mean, that was pretty fun.
Yeah, that was... it was a little nicer. Actually, it was quite a bit nicer looking than Mario 64, or Mario Kart 64 was.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
In fact, we did a list of the best looking 64 games. If we were to, think that one just wasn't even on my mind, but it honestly does look pretty nice. And not only does it look nicer, but it does have airplanes in it. It's got hovercrafts in it. And not everybody is driving or flying the same vehicle necessarily. Some courses allow you to select one of different options, which basically will change the course for you. And so you'll have some players playing with the hovercraft, while others are playing with just the normal cart, so they have to avoid the water, and then others can even be flying the airplanes at the same time and having to avoid air obstacles going through the same course. So that adds a really interesting element that you don't really see in a lot of Mario Kart levels. Mario Kart levels don't usually have a lot of multiple paths. You kind of see that later on, like more nowadays, but back then that wasn't a thing at all.
Now, in the original, not to get off of Donkey Kong, but he's in Mario Kart for Super NES. There was really only the one level that had that short. It was Super NES 3, the one with all the different colored blocks as the barrier, and you could use the feather and you could skip over a corner. I mean, that was pretty much it for branching paths. I mean, it didn't have anything like that. Nowadays, there's a million paths in every level you go to in the newer kart games.
And so sometimes I felt like Rare was really good at taking what Nintendo was doing and improving upon it. This was definitely one of those examples, I thought.
Well, I'm going to have to give it a shot because you've been jocking it pretty much as long as I've known you. So I'll have to try it.
You could probably more easily find it on DS, I think. At this point.
Would think so.
Which is also a weird thing because that was released after Rare was purchased by Microsoft.
Yeah, it's weird, but I just read an article about Rare the other day, and they did continue to support GBA and even DS even after Microsoft picked, because what were they going to do, make games for the Microsoft Zune? They didn't have anything, so they wanted to keep throwing portable games out there. They had to play ball with Nintendo, basically.
Now the next game is more your forte. I've only watched videos of this, which is Donkey Kong King of Swing.
And I actually... Okay, so now I can finally do some show and tell here.
Excellent.
I actually pulled it out, and I played a little today, because I hadn't played in a long time. Here's my copy. Let me turn it so the glare... That's my copy of King of Swing. I imported it from PlayAsia. And look how awesome this box is, first off.
Very cool.
And I was reading some old reviews, and a lot of people were complaining about the cartoony art style, but I think it's kick-ass. I really like the cartoony art. And here's the cart. The cart's pretty cool, too. It's just got a little... Let me see if I can get this on camera. Sorry for the people listening on podcasts, but this is a visual thing. So that's pretty cool. It's like a sign. But anyway, it's a 2D platformer that you control with the L and R shoulder buttons, and you can press one of the face buttons to power up. And the way you power up is as you go through the levels. So you're hitting the bumpers to move left and right. If you hit them together, you jump. And once you're in the air, if you hit the right bumper, your right hand grabs. If you use the left, your left hand grabs. And it's kind of like Clue Land. So when you grab something, you'll spin around it.
Mm-hmm.
So once you let go, you fly. You can also grab with both hands at the same time. So you go like that, and then you'll charge up, and you'll shoot whichever direction. And that's how you kill enemies in the game. And as you're killing enemies and making your way through the level, you're usually climbing up these pegs. They're different colors, and they're all over the place. And you can grab them as many times as you want with the L and R triggers. You grab bananas as you go. And after you get, I'm not sure on the number, but after you get to a certain amount of bananas, you can press one of the face buttons and you'll become invincible for a short time. So first off, this game's cool to try and speed run through levels. Try to go as fast as you can.
I noticed that.
It's also really fun to go through and try to collect everything. And there's secret bonus state. Basically, each level is at least 2 little sections. You climb all the way to the top. You get up to a point where there's a platform with an arrow. And then you'll walk on into the next section where you start off at the bottom again. And then after you make it through all the set levels, there's usually a boss fight at the end too, where there's various things. There's platforms with pegs on them that move, so it's harder to find to get on and then aim. There'll be 2 circles laid on each other, and they'll both be spinning separate directions with pegs covered. So maybe you're at a point where you need to do the charge thing to get up to the next part, so you have to time it just right and grab the pegs. Eventually, if the pegs cross each other and you're holding both of them, he's going to have to let go with one of his hands and you'll fall. So that's kind of where the difficulty comes into play. When the pegs are on moving platforms and stuff, it starts to get really tough. It's hard to... The way it's a platformer, but it's kind of like you're looking at a Zelda game. It's kind of like an overhead view, but you're still technically going 2D. But if you think about it, like I said, if you think about it like you're going overhead, you're constantly moving up, and you're just grabbing pegs and you're swinging yourself up. That's pretty much all you do in the game. It just, you go through 5 different levels. I guess I never got all the medals because I read today that you can be Diddy Kong eventually if you unlock a certain amount of medals.
Okay.
Like I said, I have the Japanese version. I do not speak or read Japanese, so I kind of just fumble my way through the menus just to get the game going. But when I bought this, it wasn't even out here, and it looked like it wasn't going to come out here, which it did eventually. But I really wanted to play it, so I imported it.
And it was worth it, right?
Oh yeah, I really like it. I started playing today just to get reacquainted with it, and it was hard to put back down. But I knew we were going to be recording soon, and I had more Donkey Kong games to play, so I had to move on. I think you should give it a shot. I think you'd really like it.
Yeah, I think at least one of them is available on the Wii U Virtual Console.
That wouldn't surprise me. I never played the DS version. I should say that. I wanted to, but I just never got a chance to.
Okay. Now the next game, or set of games, is the Donkey Konga games, which, have you played those?
I own them. I own all 3.
Okay. You own all 3 of them.
Or 2, or whatever it is.
I was going to be very excited if you owned all 3 of them.
I believe you're right. It's only 2. As you're talking, I'll start pulling those out to show people.
Excellent. So, Donkey Konga is a music game that you play with the GameCube bongos, which have a left and right side and a microphone for clapping. And it kind of plays similar to Taiko Drum Master.
Yep.
And in fact, I believe is made by the same people that make those games.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I'm pretty sure Namco had something to do with Donkey Konga. And it's really my first foray into playing a music video game.
Yeah, me too.
I really can't think of anything before that was like a rhythm-based game that I'd ever played. I really can't. So, the main reason I got really into these games is because I had enough friends who all had bongos or had enough bongos around where we were playing 4-player Donkey Konga together.
Yeah, we had we never did 4. We always did 2. And could you even do 3, or was it only 2 or 4?
I think the first game only has 2 player, and then the second game added 1, 2, 3, or 4 player.
Got you. I've still got 2 bongos, and my friend had 1, so we might have did 3 players back in the day.
Yeah, and we had a really great time competing against each other. I think you can almost play teams or something in the second one, and it was just a lot of fun. It's simple enough to where you can pretty easily get into it.
Right, but it's like Guitar Hero where it gets crazy, the more you push on.
Yes. And when you're playing in a big group setting, it's really fun whenever you have someone who's not doing the slap on the side for clapping trick.
Right.
And they're actually clapping. They can make other bongos clap also.
Yep.
And so there was an active strategy to clap loudly in my group to mess up other people, because if you're playing multiplayer, you're not necessarily playing the same audio track.
Right.
Sometimes you're competing against each other and playing different parts of the music. So you could mess up other people's scores by clapping loud enough and affecting their game, which is kind of fun.
And like you said, first music game I ever really played, and man, I couldn't believe how I didn't even necessarily like all the music that much. It's just really fun. The mechanics are the Donkey Kong bongos are great. They're a great controller. I mean, I've had these ones for over 10 years. They still work great.
Not only is it a good controller and they work really well, they're made with the thickest plastic.
Yeah, definitely.
I've had to destroy one before, and it was the most difficult thing I've had to do ever in my job at GameStop.
Oh, wow. Well, it makes sense, though, that, they should be built to take a beating. I mean, you're beating on them.
I think they're tougher than the actual GameCube themselves. And that thing can be dragged around behind a car and still work.
Yeah, that thing's a tank.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess there's not much more to say other than the third game never came out here, and that game had, I think even 2 had some of this, but it had a ton of Naruto songs in it.
Oh, wow.
And I think even the Japanese version of 2 and maybe 1 had that as well. But as more and more intros and outro songs were made available in that show, they had a lot of those songs in the Donkey Konga games, along with some other stuff. But the Naruto stuff was the main thing that interested me. And it always made me very mad that they never included any of that in the US, but at the time the show wasn't out here.
No, it wasn't. It was almost out here.
Almost. And that would have just made those games so much better to be able to play those that way.
Yeah, because like I said, I mean, I think I might have liked 4 songs maybe.
I like some pretty corny pop music, so there's a handful of songs that I really do enjoy, but there's plenty of not very good stuff. What was nice is the first game had a lot of like kid songs and lullabies and other stuff like that, along with the Donkey Kong rap song from Donkey Kong 64. The second game started to incorporate a lot more pop music, which was nice.
Yeah.
It made it better, but still not a great selection of music. But I guess I didn't realize how into that you were, so that's kind of nice.
Yeah, we played a ton of that game because like you said earlier, there wasn't anything like that. I mean, unless you lived in Japan and you played that Drum Master game you're talking about. I never heard of that or any kind of music game. The closest thing I came to a music game was making music in Mario Paint. So
yeah. The next series of games is the Donkey Kong Land games, which are the Game Boy remakes of the Super Nintendo games.
Yep, and I requested that we put those on there because just for the fact that I thought it was pretty impressive that they ported one of the best looking Super Nintendo games onto the Game Boy, and it runs pretty good. I think it looks good. It was the first game I got with my Game Boy Pocket, so I'm still rolling black and white at this point. You know, this is before color. And the cart was yellow, which I thought was pretty cool. And I don't know what to tell you. It was like playing Donkey Kong Country on my Game Boy, which blew my mind. I did get at a good point, though. I had tonsillitis, and I was in the hospital for a few days. I had to be put on like an IV drip and stuff. It was no big deal. And get some antibiotics and stuff. But my mom bought me a yellow Game Boy Pocket and the first Donkey Kong Land, which was also a yellow cart. So it was just pretty cool. I was sitting there with all my yellow stuff, playing and I beat that game while I was in the hospital. It took a while. It was a pretty beefy game.
Yeah.
I will say I'm having trouble remembering it because I haven't played it since I was like 15, and I'm pretty old now, so that was a long time ago. But I just remembered that I was really impressed with graphically, and even I thought the sound effects and music weren't too bad. You know how Game Boy is, though. It's no Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
But I was impressed that it ran pretty smoothly, and it felt like I was playing Donkey Kong Country, so...
It's definitely an impressive feat to put that game, or those games, onto a handheld console like that.
I think so.
My personal preference, I bought the first Donkey Kong Land because I really liked Donkey Kong Country, and it just, for me, Donkey Kong Country games were all about the multiplayer, and so the fact that they were single player, it lost something to me. I'm willing to look aside the graphics. I actually like the Game Boy graphics. I find them charming, but it wasn't the same as not being able to play with someone else for me.
Yeah, I can understand. I never had anybody to play these games with, though, so I've never played Donkey Kong, the original Donkey Kong Country multiplayer, ever, so I don't even know what that's like.
Oh, it's a really good experience. It's some of the best multiplayer, I think, that Nintendo had at that time period.
Cool.
And that brings us to Donkey Kong Country, the Return series specifically.
And here's another one that I requested in. Because speaking of multiplayer, Adam has an issue with the multiplayer in this game.
Yeah, well, it's due to when the game came out, really. For me, I played through Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, and 3 with my mother. My mom is pretty much the reason why I play video games. And we used to play a lot of games together, all the Mario games, and her favorites, I think, are the Donkey Kong Country games. And at the point in which the Wii Donkey Kong Country Returns game came out, she's obviously getting older. She's not as quick with her fingers as she used to be for playing video games. And it also included some motion controls that I don't think my mom was too pleased about. And I did play through some of it with my mom, but there just became a point where the levels were too difficult, and because it didn't have the option to switch characters and let the other person go through a difficult part the way the original Donkey Kong Country games had, it basically made it to where we couldn't progress through the levels because she just wasn't good enough at doing it.
But why didn't you just have her be Diddy and have her jump on Donkey Kong's back and you could have... It
was kind of a chore to be able to get that done.
Okay.
In some instances. In the original ones, you could just press a button and you'd switch out, and the other character just followed along, kind of like Sonic and Tails.
Yeah, exactly.
But with this other one, you had to coordinate to have the one character jump on the other one, and there was just a lot of dying, and we got to a point where we couldn't progress anymore. And not being able to play that with my mom really affected my enjoyment of it. I do recognize it's a good game, and I especially recognize that it's good for speedruns. But the challenge that they introduced into it, which, I mean, Donkey Kong Country games were never not challenging, but I feel like there was so much emphasis on making them very difficult that it made it to where my mom couldn't play them anymore.
Yeah, it's a bummer. It's a shame they didn't have a gold gold Diddy mode, so she could just...
That might have helped, yeah.
Or if they could have thrown Nabbit in there, because, he can't be hit by enemies. It definitely is hard as hell. I think that's why I like it the best, honestly.
That makes sense.
I like Returns on the Wii the best out of all of them. I've played through half of Tropical Freeze. It's fun too. I like the shake control on Donkey Kong Country Returns. I like shaking the roll. I got pretty good with it. I really like playing games with the Wiimote sideways, so whatever they had to do to make that work, I was down for. And all I can say about that is I played through it twice. I loved every second of it. I never went through and did speed running on levels, though. Maybe that's something I could look into later. I enjoyed getting all the letters, like all Donkey Kong, the collectathon. That's what I liked about it. And exploring. I liked how everything was a lot bigger. I really liked the levels where you're riding on the barrels, the rocket-propelled barrel.
Okay, like the auto-scrolling levels?
Yeah, and you have to hit, if you hit the button more, you go up. If you tap it less, you go down. I like those levels a lot. I thought they were really fun, just to shake up the formula.
The silhouette levels were cool.
Yes, they're really cool. And the co-op, if you're playing with somebody who doesn't struggle with it, it is pretty fun. It is hard, though, man. I mean, it's a tough-ass game.
Yeah. Now, I guess you haven't played as much of Tropical Freeze, but my opinion, even though I'm not a huge fan of the Returns games, is that Tropical Freeze, in the end, is a much better game because of a couple of reasons. One, they kind of refined the controls a bit to where I didn't have as much issue with accidentally rolling off the sides of ledges in that game.
Okay.
And the music has a lot of inspiration that they took from the original Donkey Kong Country games, which I liked as well. The first Returns didn't really have that, but they brought back a lot of tracks from the older games in Tropical Freeze, which I really liked. And overall, I just liked the structure of the way the levels worked in that game a little bit better.
Yeah, I like it. I just needed to rent. I needed to rent a Pokemon game to finish my decks. I was telling you this the other day. I was trying to get my full deck so I could get my breeding stone, which makes eggs breed faster in Pokemon. So I had to send that one back to GameFly. But I am eventually going to buy that game because I do like it and I want to finish it. But I played enough of it. I think I played like 14 hours last time I looked. I played enough of it to judge it, and I like the Wii one the best. I will agree with you. I don't really remember the music, so it must not have been anything too crazy, because that's usually the first thing I remember about most games is how good.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that the music in Returns maybe wasn't the best ever, but I don't remember it being bad either. So
I even think that they got one of the original composers from Rare to work on that game and remix some of the music from the older ones. And you still didn't
enjoy it.
The music is really good. I will totally give it that. It looks nicer. Obviously, it's on a better system.
Oh, you're talking about Tropical Freeze now. I'm sorry.
At this point, yeah. So, yeah. The music isn't bad in the first one. It's just, I have my reasons, and I think they're pretty legitimate. But I don't hate the game. It's just not what I would want it to be.
See, the thing is, when it was coming out, Adam and I were both really hyped for it, and he was disappointed. Meanwhile, I'm like losing my mind over it. So, and I still really like it a lot. I actually just put it in a couple months ago just to run through some levels, and still feels good. Still fun to play.
Awesome. So the next game that we're going to talk about is Donkey Kong 94. Or it's just Donkey Kong, but it came out in 1994, so it's referred to that.
Donkey Kong 94, see if we can get it looking good.
Brad's showing off the cartridge right there.
This is actually my second cartridge. I couldn't find my first one. My first one, the label was banged up. This is a perfect copy. There's nothing wrong with it.
To solve that unsolved mystery, you actually gave me your damaged copy.
Oh, yeah. You're right. I totally forgot about that.
Yep. So I have the one with the messed up label.
Yeah, that's what you get.
Which I really appreciate. It's a good game.
Oh, man, it's my favorite Donkey Kong game. I was, I've kind of conceded and let it be put down a little far on the list because there's a few that we both really like a lot. But if it's gun to my head, Donkey Kong 94, I've been obsessed with this game since it came out. That's probably why I had 2 copies of it.
Oh, what can you say about it? It makes it so great to you.
Well, let's see. It's basically like playing the original Donkey Kong, so you got the same mechanics, basically. If you jump from a platform that's too high up, you'll die. So you have to be careful. As you fall, you actually start to fall forward, and you get to a certain point where you're almost completely upside down. There's no way you're surviving. You're going to land on your head and die. But if you're only like maybe halfway leaning over as you fall, you'll actually hit the ground and roll, which is kind of crazy to see Mario land on the ground and roll.
Yeah.
But what this game offers that the original NES Donkey Kong games doesn't is the ability to do all the cool moves that he does in Mario 64, but on a smaller scale since it's Game Boy. But you can short stop and do a backflip. You can, and I actually think this is where the triple jump started to be invented, because you can do a handspring in this game. So if you hold down and press jump, you'll flip onto your hands. And if you don't touch anything else, you'll stay on your hands, which is cool, because if let's say Donkey Kong's throwing barrels at you or there's things falling off the ground, you'll actually use your feet and kick that crap out of your way, and you won't die. So that's pretty cool. And then you can press the jump button again and flip back up. Now, if you do it all in one fluid motion, though, hands jump to your hands and then hit jump immediately again. You'll land on your feet again, and the jump will sound a little different. It'll go a little higher, and then if you hit jump again, you'll do a really big jump, and then you'll land, and you'll lift your hands like a gymnast, like you just, a double handspring. And you could use that to make the levels way easier than they should be, but you have to be skilled with the jumps to do that. And there's lots of other crazy platforming in this game. There's wires you can grab onto that you can get yourself spinning around over and over. And then when you let go, you fling yourself all the way across levels. I mean, it's crazy how far you'll go. And there's wires. There's even wires that are on an angle, so you'll shoot diagonally, and then you really fly.
Awesome.
There's many themes. I think there's 100 levels in the game.
Yeah.
And they're way bigger than any of the levels in the original Donkey Kong. And there's all kinds of themes. There's like, you're on a pirate ship, you're on an airplane, you're in the forest, you're down in the caves, you're in the ocean. And every level has different mechanics. There's switches. There's different, there's hidden doors. They'll put like 5 different doors out. You don't know which one it is unless you pay attention to where Donkey Kong last ran into. There's switches that raise and lower, electronic doors. There's switches that bring platforms out and in, so you could use it to trap enemies from hitting you, get to new areas. It never ends. Like, just when you think there's not going to be anything else introduced, they introduce even more in this game. It seems like it goes on forever.
And that's one of the cool things I think the game has, is it starts off with the original levels.
Right.
And you pretty much, if you've never played it and you don't know what it is, you're just like, oh, this is a nice little remake of the original Donkey Kong for the Game Boy.
Right.
But it doesn't stop there, and it does keep adding new things and all these new levels. And
the key mechanic is actually really tough. To beat a level, you have to grab a key and carry it. And once you're holding the key, you can't do any of your stuff anymore. You're way slower. Your jump's lower. And if you drop the key, it disappears. It only stays out for maybe 10 seconds. So it gets pretty tough. There's parts where you'll throw a key on a conveyor belt, pull a lever, make it run down the conveyor belt, catch it on the other side, pick it back up, put it on another conveyor belt, just to get it through little sections to get it back down to wherever the key door is.
Crazy.
It gets really, really tough. But fun. It's always fun. Even the most challenging levels are always really fun. I recommend everybody play this game. It's definitely on Virtual Console. I think I've actually bought it 3 times because I bought the Virtual Console version too. So.
Awesome. Well, I'm sorry I had to be so low on the list at the number 3 position, because I do know that you really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's one I've gone back to many, many times, and I actually pulled out my old Game Boy to play it today because I couldn't find any of my SPs, so I was rocking it on this guy. And I tried to use I put my desk lamp on over, and I couldn't see it. I ended up actually standing in front of my window where the sun was coming in, and then it looked perfect. And it made me remember that's how it was when I was a kid. It always looked better if I could catch the sun just right.
The trouble we had to go through to be able to play handheld games back then.
Yeah, seriously. Game Boy. What was it called? The Game Boy Light thing. It had the magnifying glass, had the speakers built into the side. It flipped open like a laptop.
Yeah, that thing was crazy. And so now it comes to the Donkey Kong Country series, um,
Yeah,
which is
SNES 1, 2, 3.
which is not my favorite Donkey Kong Country or Donkey Kong games, but it's right up there,
Yeah.
and mostly because they're really good games. They're really nice looking for Super Nintendo games, and they keep getting. You think Donkey Kong Country is really good looking, and then Donkey Kong Country 2 looks even better.
Yep.
And they keep doing that. And it's got fantastic music throughout.
Mm-hmm.
So they are very solid games, but I do think, like I was talking about before, playing it through with my mom added an extra layer of, I guess, nostalgia that makes me like those even more, beyond them just being fantastic games. The buddy system of having basically their power-ups of riding the different animals is
the vehicles
a lot of fun.
The rhino, the swordfish.
And then, oddly, you start to, as the games go on, you start to turn into them rather than ride on them, which becomes crazy.
Yeah,
they start introducing that in 2. And I just, the quirkiness of those makes me like them a lot too. I like K. Rool. I like all the Kremlings and all the weird enemies that are in those games.
Yeah, they are weird too.
There's a cat in 2 that has 9 tails and will grab you and spin you around and throw you. Lots of weird piratey, mostly crocodile and alligator and lizard baddies. Goofy, rare game definitely for sure. And I don't know what else I wanted to say about it. I mean, your impressions while I think about that.
Well, I mean, when it came out, I'd already played a billion platformers. Just like now, I love platformers, so I immediately was going to like it. The controls are great on it. It starts you off right at the first level. It's got secrets, and that's what really jumped out at me when it first came out. I got that video from Nintendo Power in the mail that previewed it, and when I saw him climb up and then jump across the trees to get bananas and stuff instead of just running down the normal section, I never played a game that had hidden things like that. I guess Mario 3 had a little bit of that where you could fly up to some things you didn't know about, but Donkey Kong, I mean, there was never a game I played where you had to make sure you held onto a barrel as you ran through so you could find a secret hole that there was no indicator that it was there, and then you would jump down to a bonus level. And there's tons of that stuff through all the country games, and that's what really drew me to them when they came out. Like I said, I never got to play the multiplayer, but that always sounded fun to me. And I really enjoyed the collecting aspect of it. So I would get... These are one of the first games I actually bought player guides for. I believe the second one, I was able to get it when I renewed my Nintendo Power subscription. And I know I did that again for the third game, for sure. So I actually, timed renewing my subscription around getting my free player's guide for the Donkey Kong Country games. That's how much I liked them. Yeah.
That's actually... The Donkey Kong Country was one of the first reasons why I got Nintendo Power in the first place, was to get the guide for that.
I was a lucky kid. My mom spoiled me with stuff like that, so I wasn't there off the bat, but I was in pretty early, and I basically got Nintendo Power through its whole life until the very end. I think I've still got the last issue sitting around here somewhere.
Now, for me, I had guides for 1 and 2. I never got a guide for 3, but these were all games that I 100%ed them. I over 100%ed them. That's one of the goofy things about the Donkey Kong Country games is there was like 101% on the first one. I think 102% on the second one.
Yeah.
And then I think it goes all the way to like 111% in the
something
third
weird
game.
like that. I'm trying to remember the exact number.
And I was very impressed at the fact that I was able to beat and get everything in the third game, which a lot of people don't like as much as the other 2.
I thought it was awesome, personally.
It's a little different. It has... the music is kind of weird. It's got Canadian bears in it.
The levels are different, too. You got more... There's some more, like, vertical style stages and stuff. There's
Mm-hmm.
not a lot of that in the first two that I can remember. Maybe a little bit in the second one, like when you're
Yes.
climbing the pirate ships and stuff, but definitely not in the first game. The first game was basically just a runathon
Yeah.
for the most part. And I want to mention that what was really cool was I never played a game that had things like mine carts in it, stuff like that, where you were jumping into a cart that went really fast. I mean, there was moving platforms in platformer games, but nothing like the mine cart. The way it felt, the way you'd have to jump from track to
Yes.
track. I mean, it was amazing. Man, I'm getting all nostalgic just thinking about playing all these old Donkey Kong Country games. But that's it. In the end, like you said, it's really about it had great music, it looked good, and the platforming was always top notch.
Yes.
That's why I liked it.
All right, and that leads us to, I think this is my favorite Donkey Kong game,
Yeah,
and it's right up there for you as well.
it is. It's the lat 1, 2, 3 are they could all be one in my book. So
Mm-hmm.
as far as our list is concerned.
Yeah, and the last game we're going to talk about is Donkey Kong Jungle Beat.
Yeah, which I actually just put a couple videos up of on my channel.
Yeah,
if anybody's
it's
interested.
really awesome that you're doing that.
I'm doing my Donkey Kong bongo cam in the bottom right corner. So you can actually, and I mirrored my camera so it looks correct. So even though I'm really hitting, if I was hitting the right bongo when it wasn't mirrored, it looked like I was hitting the left one in my camera. So I had to flip them. But now it looks good, and hopefully everybody will enjoy checking that video out.
Yeah, it's really cool that you have the camera set up like that, and it's awesome that you're doing that. I would have never thought that a platformer game that you play with a bongo would be so finely tuned
Yeah.
and so much fun.
Yeah, it's so much fun. So it's like exhilarating at times when you really get moving. I'm glad we finally mentioned Jungle Beat. So when I was talking about King of Swing, Jungle Beat would be the thing that I would close. It's basically the same basic difference, except for in Jungle Beat you hit. Let's pretend like the bongos are right, shoulder buttons on your DS. You'd hit the right shoulder button to move right, the right bongo. Hit the left bongo to move left. Hit both the bongos together, and you jump.
Mm-hmm.
And then the clap function makes Donkey Kong clap, basically, which does all kinds of stuff in the game.
It hurts enemies, grabs bananas,
Yep.
activates flowers that give you new items where you can jump around more. It does a lot of stuff.
Clap has two rings that come out, two sound waves. One sound wave's red, and then the sound wave that goes out further than that sound wave is green. Anything that the green touches will basically activate. So, like, if you clap around mosquitoes, they'll turn into an arrow and show you which way to go. The green hits it. If the green hits an enemy, a lot of enemies will get stunned. Now, if the red hits the enemy when you clap, they'll get destroyed, usually. Or they'll get to the point where you can actually engage them and then,
you grab onto them.
Yeah, and hit your bongos as fast as you can and punch the crap out of them. And there's a lot of that in the game.
And the main aspect that really drives the fluidity and like the exhilarating part of the game, I think, is building up the combos,
right?
And making sure that you're not hitting the ground to stop your combo. Because as long as you're in the air or sliding down a hill or climbing, like grabbing onto certain aspects, like the little monkeys that will throw you,
or grabbing a ledge, wall jumping. You can grip a wall and slide down it. That won't kill your combo.
The little parachute thing.
Now you can only see the key is to do all these different moves while you're going as you're collecting bananas and never touching the ground, and you'll start comboing up. But you can't do the same move twice. So you can't just like sit there and keep jumping off a wall over and over again. You won't get like a ton of you'll just get your one combo, and then you got to move on and do something else to get it going even further.
And just as you're going through and doing all these different moves that give you an extra combo that will multiply the bananas that you're collecting in that combo.
Right.
It just has an amazing flow to the game that really starts to get crazy when you're hopping from in the air to into water.
Yeah, like floating water. There's one level in particular where you're falling through the sky and there's like square chunks of water all over the place,
Mm-hmm.
and you're jumping from like one square chunk of water to you actually see a lot of that in newer Mario games now too. But this was the first game I'd ever seen with that mechanic.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about hopping in and out of water is that the bongos, rather than moving you left to right, will move you like down in that direction. And so it's like flipping the way you kind of think about your movement,
Right.
and starts to add a really interesting aspect to it, especially because at first it's mostly like you're on a land level, you're on an ice level, you're in a water level, but like you mentioned earlier, then you start to get into the later part of the game, and you're flying through floating balls of water and giant fruits.
Yep.
And all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah, it gets really crazy. I mean, the game's crazy just on the surface. It's a platformer you're controlling with bongos.
And the music is really good in this game too.
Yep.
And it's got really fun boss fights as well.
Yeah, the boss battles are really cool. Some are punch-out style, some are platformer style. They shake it up, honestly. There's lots of different kinds of fights.
A surprising amount of variety for such a simple game, or a simple concept at least.
And there's still classic Donkey Kong Country vehicle where you're riding rams and rhinos and all that kind of stuff, which shakes up the gameplay too.
Yeah, it's just it's a fantastic game. You're making me want to play it, just by watching you play it and just by talking about it and thinking about it. And I did want to mention that I have the GameCube version. I also have the Wii version, the new Play Control version, and it really does not translate well.
That's what I was reading
version
too. I never tried it.
You can play the original one with a GameCube controller, and even that's not very, very good. But you would think that they would have been able to make a pretty nice Wiimote sideways control scheme for that game, but it just doesn't work very well.
Well, the problem is they don't let you hold the directional in the. You could use the GameCube controller like you said, but you still have to tap on it like it's a bongo. You can't just go right and left. You still got to tap right a few times, just like you're tapping on the bongo. It's hard to explain. You kind of have to play it to know how it feels.
You really do.
You basically build momentum. So you'll bang on the right bongo a few times, and he'll start to speed, and then you can kind of lay off it a little, but not forever. Eventually, you got to get it going again if you're still trying to go right. It's got a really weird feel to it, but once you master it, man, it's so much fun. It's one of the funnest games ever.
Yeah.
It's definitely the best bongo control game ever, for sure.
Yeah. And so with that, I think we're done talking about Donkey Kong. Pretty much we came up with this list so that I could have Donkey Kong music in this episode. That was the main reason why I suggested this.
When you mentioned it, I thought it was a great idea just because there's not a lot of Donkey Kong stuff out there. So, I mean, when we actually started looking over the games, I was surprised to see how few Donkey Kong games there are.
For one of like the real first Nintendo characters, that is very true.
Yep. But anyway, speaking of Donkey Kong Country, we're going to do another Donkey Kong Country song for the next break. It's the Aquatic Ambience song, and we will be right back.
And now it's time for the news section.
All right.
Yes. Remember when I talked about Pokemon Go?
Yes.
And about how it wasn't really going to have real battles in it and all that stuff?
Yep.
Like I suspected, they're kind of rolling out content for the beta, I guess to test specific things at specific times. And they recently had an update that added a bunch of extra content, including battles.
Oh, cool.
So that's the main thing that I wanted to talk about from the update that was released, is that the catching of the Pokemon has added some new elements to it. There's apparently like these rings that change color depending on the circumstances of the battle, which will kind of increase your chances of catching the Pokemon. And so you can, it almost functions what I would imagine very similar to the Pokemon Safari.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me, the Safari
You're not
game.
really throwing mud at them or anything like that, but you can basically do things to make them easier to catch. So it won't be completely pay to buy Master Balls so that you can catch stuff and spend a lot of money doing it.
Cool.
There'll be realistic ways to catch more difficult Pokemon, which is good to hear. And the other thing is the actual battles versus other Pokemon just for battling's sake. It looks like the battles are going to be real time, so that it's not a turn-based system.
Oh, wow.
And it's going to involve swiping to dodge left or right, tapping to attack, and then pressing and holding to do charge attacks.
So now we've got 4 different ways to battle a Pokemon, basically. You've got Smash, you got Pokken, you got Original, and now you got this new system where you're touchscreening all over the place.
And so it's really starting to like sound like a full game and something that I think a lot of people are really going to be able to get into and have a lot of fun with.
I'm a little more interested in it now that you say that there's battling in it. That piques my interest a bit. So I'm going to check it out once it's out of beta.
I really hope for your sake that there's some kind of Pokemon bank
so
coordination.
I can move guys around and so yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, you could catch Pokemon in this, bring them to your team in Sun and Moon. That would be really cool.
That would be really cool.
Some other news here. Atlas finally announced that the sequel to Shin Megami Tensei 4 is coming out in the U.S.
Okay.
It's going to be this summer, and instead of being called Shin Megami Tensei 4 Final, it's going to be called Shin Megami Tensei 4 Armageddon. Or Apocalypse, sorry. Apocalypse.
Either one's kind of cool.
Yeah. It's a name that sounds a little bit more Western. I like it. And that's summer. And then Xseed also announced that Corpse Party is going to be released for the 3DS in the US, which has been out in Japan for a little while. And I've played a little bit of this. It's basically like a 2D survival horror game with a lot of story elements. Not really up your alley, Brad.
I've
but
never played it, so
it has lots of different endings that you can get. And lots of ways to like fail the level and like unique death sequences and stuff. So it kind of reminds me of some of the Telltale games and the way their stories work. But this is in like a ghost-filled, death-filled, haunted school in Japan. So a little bit different setting than they normally deal with.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a Telltale guy. I've tried many of them. Just too point and clicky for me. I can't get into it.
Yeah, I do like the Walking Dead ones.
Yeah, that was one of the first ones I tried. It's okay.
Okay.
That's more your style, though. You like games like that.
It definitely is. And so that one's going to be coming out in the summer as well. There's going to be a download version as well as a limited physical version of that game, which Xseed likes to do that, like limited
Yeah.
physical. It enables them to actually release the game with a cartridge, but helps make sure that they're not losing themselves in a bunch of copies of the game and losing a bunch of money.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
they've
It's a
done
smart business plan.
well, they've done a great job of being able to release a lot of niche games that not a lot of people are going to play, and still being able to stay afloat and remain a very good company. I buy a lot of their games,
You pretty
and
much
even though
buy
they
almost all their games.
yeah, and even I'm their target audience almost.
Yep.
And I really appreciate them as a company because they go where a lot of companies probably aren't willing to go with some of these titles that they know probably aren't going to sell very well, and they do it anyway because they're good games.
Yep.
Still, so it's very appreciated. And the only bit of actual news that I have is that from April 23rd to April 24th is Splatfest again, and this time it's going to be SpongeBob versus Patrick the Starfish.
Oh, cool.
So all of those SpongeBob memes that you see in the Miiverse for Splatoon all the time already are going to be that much more now that that's like the main focus of the Splatfest, which I think it's pretty awesome that they were able to get that as
Yeah,
like
it's cool.
a cross promotion thing. I know they've done Transformers, they had Autobots versus Decepticons,
Yep.
and I think they had a couple of other ones, but it's really cool that they got SpongeBob on there, I think.
Yeah, most of the other ones are all Nintendo based, so it's cool that they're branching off from Nintendo now. Or like generic things like cats versus dogs, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. I thought they had done something else. I didn't know they did Transformers. That must have been when I jumped out of the game for a little while, so I must have missed that one. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so you have some stuff to talk about in this section as well.
Yeah, the only newsy thing I wanted to bring up was that there's a new Nintendo Minute out right now that shows off Star Fox Co-op. And, man, it looks really cool. So it's basically one person flies the ship on the TV, and the other person is the gunner with the Wii U gamepad. So it's like
Star Wars.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wrote. It's like some Millennium Falcon action. You know, you could jump in the you could be Finn and jump in the gunner seat, and I'll be Ray and fly the plane around. I mean, it's really
awesome.
It looks like it's really cool too. You've got charge shots, missiles, just like usual. And they were getting pretty intricate. I mean, he's throwing loop-de-loops all over the place, and she's shooting while he's loop-de-looped. And, you know, like he looked just like Poe out there doing all kinds of crazy maneuvers. I'm really excited for this game. Everybody should go check out that video. It was actually pretty entertaining, and they showed off a lot of the co-op. Oh, and the only other thing I noticed in it, that Star Wolf's ship is really awesome. It's all black and red. It looks kind of like an X-Wing. It's badass.
Awesome. And you also I wanted you to talk about Soul Reavers,
which I played and made a video of the tutorial right before we started recording, so it's still pretty fresh in my mind.
I'm just interested in your initial impressions on that, since people can go and take part in that open beta right now.
Yeah, it's going to be up for, I forget how long it's actually going to be up for, but I only played the tutorial. And so there's no multiplayer. I assume that once I jump into actual levels, I'll be playing with other people because it makes you sign online immediately. You have to agree to terms of use like 3 times. It keeps going. It keeps going. Oh, it's been updated again. It gives you another term of use. It's been updated again. You go through and do all that, and it loads up. There was 4 characters to choose from. I chose the guy who runs with a shotgun and an axe, and he wears like a Jason mask, basically.
Okay.
So I could see how multiplayer would probably be pretty fun. It's got kind of a Left 4 Dead vibe to it, but it's in third person. Now, I don't know how the other characters are, but the character I was being was kind of slow. He didn't really have any combos that I could figure out with his melee weapon. He basically had a weak attack and then a strong attack with it. His weak attack, he would swing it twice. His strong attack, he would turn it around and like jab him in the face with the handle, which is kind of cool. And then he had his shotgun. And the shooting is kind of weird. So if you're moving around normal and you haven't hit any buttons, you can move the camera around really fast. Now, most third-person shooters I'm used to playing, you'll hold like the left trigger or the LZ button on the Wii U pad, and you'll bring up, an auto aim where it makes it so the camera doesn't move around as much, but you still can move pretty good. And and it brings the camera up to your face a little bit, so you're like kind of over shoulder view. This game doesn't have that. In this game, you actually hit, I think it was ZR, and that puts you into a close-up view, and it gives you a reticle in front of you on the screen, but the camera moves super slow. What they want you to do is to bring this up, and then you actually press one of the other triggers. I apologize for not remembering the button, and you'll auto aim, kind of like auto targeting in the like in Zelda Ocarina of Time. So it's really weird, man. It's really weird to train yourself to press the one button just to change the view, and then have to press the other trigger too, and then you got to press the other trigger to shoot. So I'm hoping as I play it more, it's gonna feel better. I'm also kind of hoping that it's the beta and they're gonna fix this, because I don't really like that for shooting.
Or maybe all the characters feel very different, and there's someone else that you like better.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I just won't shoot. Maybe I'll just use melee weapons, because the shooting feels really weird. But
that's unfortunate.
I need to play more. I'm going to play a bunch this weekend. I'll record some more, and I'll have a lot more to talk about on the next episode.
Yeah, and I'd like to try it as well, so that I can give my perspective on it.
We should try it together sometime this weekend if we can find the time.
If we can both get on it at the same time, that'd be awesome.
Cool. So let's go ahead and close out the show, man. This one's been going on for a while.
Not quite yet. I have some releases for this week.
Oh, I forgot we do releases.
Yeah, so I just wanted to cover the releases from yesterday and this week, because a game actually came out today.
Okay.
Bravely, the second End Layer came out on Friday today, and then also this week a game called Langrisser Reincarnation, which is a terrible strategy RPG. Also came out. I don't think I said terrible enough, because it looks really bad.
I've never even heard of it.
I'm not surprised. It just, I guess for people who are excited to play it, that's good for them, but it just doesn't look very good to me at all. And that's coming from someone who seemingly buys every RPG that comes out on the DS. And then as far as download stuff goes, there's a bunch of DLC for Runbow, which is a colorful platformer multiplayer game for the Wii U.
Right.
So that got a bunch of DLC. I haven't played that myself, but it looks like it would be kind of a fun multiplayer kind of party game almost.
Yeah, it looks interesting. It's one of those, one of those games where you keep running, right? You're just hitting buttons to dodge and stuff.
Yeah, but like each character is a different color that can, and that kind of affects which platforms you can land on and stuff like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that came out this week. I showed you a video of this, which looks interesting. I kind of want to try it out, which is Paranautical Activity, which makes me think it's an underwater ghost shooting game. The reason I'm interested in it is it's got a somewhat procedurally generated level layout system, and it has a really cool voxel art style. That's very blocky, and I like the way it looks. I've watched a couple videos on it since it got released on the Wii U, and from what I've heard, the combat isn't very in-depth, but I'm also watching videos for the initial release, and this is a release that's based on some extra content added to the game, so maybe that'll add something to it. I'll probably pick it up at some point, just because anything with any kind of randomization to it, I'm kind of a sucker for.
It's it's procedurally generated, like a roguelike?
Kind of, yeah. It's very light on those elements, but
it does have some of that.
Yes. There is a game called As Divine Hearts, which is a very Super Nintendo style RPG that also came out on the Wii U. And a game called Dodge Club Party, which is a game they released. This company released some other games on the Wii U that were like an 8x8 pixel grid. So it was just big squares of pixels, and they're really simple games. Like one is a racing game in this and these other games. So like imagine only having 8x8 pixels and making a racing game out of that. So they're doing some really interesting stuff with a very limited amount of pixels to work with,
Yeah,
which is kind of
that's interesting.
I find that really cool.
I'm trying to
This
imagine how
game,
they did it. I guess I'll have to check some videos out because I can't
well,
even picture
basically,
it.
like one pixel is a car and it moves forward, and so lines of other pixels will move down the sides of the screen and kind of come in as like a road that you're driving along, and so you kind of have to like it's very like uh, Atari esque kind of gameplay going on there.
Yeah, that's what it
Very
sounds like.
simple, or like a Tiger handheld if you remember those
Oh
things.
yeah.
So yeah, something like that. This game, however, is a multiplayer-focused game and has a larger grid. I think it's 32 by 32, so they're working with way more pixels this time. And this, you're controlling a little pixel, and you can have up to 4 people, I think, play. And so you each have your own pixel, and different things will move across the screen. That if they touch you, they'll kill you. So there's like things that look like fireballs and like things that move around the edge of the level, and it's basically just avoid the obstacles, and the last person left wins the round.
Oh, that's
I
cool.
think it's like $2, and it's just like a cute little multiplayer game that's really simple and kind of a challenge to themselves to make something that's compelling with as few pixels as possible, which, like I said, I'm kind of all about that.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's cool to go back, and it's kind of like when they go back and they put Smash Brothers on Game Boy.
Hmm.
Guys do that stuff for fun, you know. There's all
Yeah.
kinds of what is that called?
Smash Land.
Yeah, Smash Land. It's called your D. I forget the term when you do that to a game.
Oh, uh,
I'm
I don't
forgetting
even
it
know.
too. We both heard it a
Yes.
million times. We just can't remember it right now.
Oh gosh, this is embarrassing. Um, I'll move along and say that there's a game called Draw to Survive, which is kind of like Canvas Curse mixed with Line Rider. I don't know if you ever saw Line Rider, where you're like a little ski guy, but it's kind of like a really simplified, like hand drawn, like sketchy Canvas Curse kind of game. And then a game called Slots Pharaoh's Riches, which also came out on the Wii U.
Is
And then
Line
for
Rider the old school skiing game where you just ski downhill and then the abominable snowman comes and eats you eventually?
that's ski free. Line Rider, you had like a little guy on a sled, and you would draw lines, and he would like automatically gain momentum by going down hills and stuff, and you could draw really elaborate courses for him to go through. And
Oh,
that's
cool.
all it was. It was not really a game, but it was a lot of fun to just mess with and see what crazy things you could do with it. It just kind of looks like that. And then Brain Age came out in the Virtual Console. I think it's kind of I don't know. I guess it could kind of work on the Wii U, but it not being portable seems kind of weird to me. But that's just my personal preference. And then the 3DS, you have Super Strike Beach Volleyball.
That's
that
a
came
good
out.
game.
And X Cave 3, which is I think it's a first-person dungeon crawler game, one of those type of games. It's the third one in the series on there. And then for Virtual Console, one of our favorites, Donkey Kong Country 2, came out.
Awesome.
Another one of our favorites, Super Metroid, came out.
Yeah, but we already
uh,
got that when it was on sale for,
Well, this
70
is for
cents or whatever.
But this is the new 3DS exclusive Super Nintendo games on their system. So you can take it portable and stuff. Link to the Past also came out.
Cool.
And so they, 3 very classic, very good games. And then they released another Fire Emblem Fates DLC as well.
Oh, wow. They're pumping those out, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. And
The word we were looking for was demake.
yes,
It's a
okay.
demake instead of a remake.
It sounds so simple now. Can't believe we didn't think of that.
Cool. Is that it?
That is it, finally.
All right. So, after I already messed up like 10 minutes ago, we are actually going to close out the show this time. You still have some of those Mini Mario Amiibo challenge codes to give out, right?
Yes, I do. So I still have at least one of each for the Wii U and the 3DS. So if you contact me on Twitter at iDrawRobots, and ask for a code, I will give you a code so you can play it early. Now we're getting on to about the game doesn't come out that far away from now.
Yeah, it's
but
pretty
you
soon.
can still get it a little bit early. If you have nothing to play and you want to try it out and you got some amiibo, it's pretty much free if I give you the code. So you might as well, really.
Yeah, jump on it.
Yeah, so find me at iDrawRobots on Twitter, and I will give you one of those codes.
Cool. And if you want to see some videos on that game, I think I've got like at least 10 or 12 up at this point. It's at Bradley Guys on YouTube. I am also on Twitter, same name. And until next week, we'll catch you later.
Binka binka bonk, binka binka bonk, binka binka bonk, binka binka bonk, binka binka berlini, berlini, bonk, berlini, berlini, bonk, berlini, bonk, berlini, bonk, bink. You did it! You kissed the raccoon.